What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's reaction video is Geography with Jeff, the legend of the channel. We like watching this stuff recently, don't we?
Yeah.
And it is why so few Americans live along the Gulf Coast of the United States. His link is in the description, but what should we do?
Wait till after the video.
Wait till after the video, we'd seriously appreciate it. Smash that subscribe button as well. On our road to 160,000 subscribers, which is mental to say, but it'll help if every one of you legends hit that subscribe button. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Let's find out some more geography with Jeff and let's get into it.
That sea, by the way, around the Bahamas. Wow.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? You mean down here?
Yeah.
It looks nice. It's very light blue, isn't it?
Yeah.
If anyone knows why it's so light blue,
Yeah,
let
why
us know
just
in the
that
comments.
bit?
Yeah, because it makes it feel pure, doesn't it? I know we weren't meant to do that on this video, but good spotting. High five. Well done. Right, let's get into it. What we got?
The Gulf Coast is truly a beautiful part of the United States.
Okay.
Its beaches stretch for literally hundreds of miles and, outside of an occasional tropical storm, is blessed with weather that most regions in the world would beg for.
Yeah,
and on top of it all,
definitely.
this particular area of the United States is in a well-developed region of the country as a whole.
Okay.
So why don't more Americans live in this particular area of the Gulf Coast?
I do like the weather there. That is a winner for me.
Yeah, but with the storms.
Hello
they're
and
off.
welcome to Geography by Jeff. Have you ever thought about the Gulf Coast of the United States? Technically, it's a
might
large
be a
area
nice bit
that
sunburned.
extends all the way from the bottom of Texas to the tip of Florida. But what we're most interested in this video is a particular section of the Gulf Coast that appears to be underpopulated compared to the rest of the eastern United States. And we're going to explore why that might be today.
Let's go.
But first,
Right, let's explore for the second time. Let's go.
now, if you follow my channel, you might recognize that I've created a similar video a couple months ago on America's Empty Belt,
We
where
watched
we
that.
explored why there's such a huge swath of land in the middle of the country with so few people relative to most other regions of the country.
Yeah.
But the area we're talking about today is quite different. For one, if we look at this map of the United States at night, you can see a clear line where the development pattern of the US shifts from a high density of cities and towns to sparse development.
Yeah,
The
big
Gulf
difference.
Coast area that we're talking about today exists fully within this eastern side of the country with more cities and towns. But that just makes it all the more interesting. With over 250 million people living in the eastern side of the country,
That's a lot.
our
Wow.
Gulf Coast region has approximately 10 million people.
Not
And given
much.
its location, there should probably be more.
It's a
Primarily
big chunk of
because,
land.
unlike the middle of the country, this region is relatively comfortable in terms of weather. If we look at the Köppen method of determining climate types across geographies, we can see that the entire region of our Gulf Coast would be listed as temperate with consistent precipitation, but hot summers.
Quite
Okay.
comfortable.
This makes it
Interesting.
particularly well suited for people to live there, so long as you don't mind the humidity. The southern half of Florida, which has largely the same climate, has seen incredible growth over the last few decades, largely due to people fleeing the cold north. Additionally, unlike some other areas of the country, this region is not lacking in water. In addition to the Mississippi River running through it, which is one of the world's largest rivers,
Yep.
there's also the Alabama River, another major river,
They are so
and many
expensive.
more
Yeah.
tributaries in the region. Suffice it to say, a lack of water is also not to blame for the relatively low population.
So
That-
what is it?
That is beautiful, by the way. Like, imagine
Yeah.
living in there with just all these little lakes around
I
you.
know.
That must be nice.
Yeah, it must be.
And while today the region is underpopulated, at one point in history, the area did experience explosive growth. Between 1800 and 1900, the entire region we're talking about today grew from just a few thousand people overall to well over 1 million people by 1860.
Oh,
But it's
wow.
worth pointing out that most of those people were, in fact, slaves. While we'll never know exactly how many slaves lived within our region specifically, the slave population in Mississippi by 1860 is thought to have been about 55% of the total population.
Oh, wow.
So it's
That's a
probably safe
lot.
to say
Lot.
that at least half of the total population were enslaved during this period until after the US Civil War, which leads us to our first huge exodus of people from the region. The Gulf Coast region is a beautiful part of the United States. Amazing beaches, eclectic cultures, and southern hospitality all combine to make a region that you would think there would be at least one major city. But
Sounds
outside
good
of
to
New
me.
Orleans, which isn't even in the top 40 of metro areas, all of its cities are pretty small. And there's a reason for that. But before we get into why the Gulf Coast has so few people living in it, if you're enjoying this
Would
video,
appreciate it.
hit that subscribe button. More fun geography videos are just a single click away. During the early part of the 1800s, the northern states had always been a place for people to escape to when they were fleeing slavery. So
Okay.
it should come as no surprise that, after slavery ended, newly freed peoples began to move to other regions of the country. At this time in the United States history, the majority of people in southern states were black. But with freedom, this meant that they could go anywhere. And, in particular, if they could afford to move, they chose to move either north or west rather than stay in the south. But it
Bad
wouldn't be
memories,
for
I
another
suppose,
few
isn't it?
decades that we begin to see a huge exodus of African Americans move north. Starting around 1910, we see the beginnings of the Great Migration, wherein over the course of a few decades, roughly 6 million African Americans moved north in order to escape the harsh Jim Crow era laws of the South.
Okay,
But it
that
wasn't
makes sense.
exclusively
Yeah.
about persecution. It also had a lot to do with the economy as well. The southern
Yeah.
part of the United States has always relied more on agriculture than the north. And while at one point this was an economic boon for the South, as the world began its rapid industrialization, the North quickly
Yeah.
outpaced the southern states.
Makes sense,
This
more
was
money
felt
in it as well.
particularly hard during the 1920s and 1930s when people began to move en masse to cities where factory jobs and a middle-class lifestyle awaited them. This was exacerbated during the Great Depression when agriculture was hit particularly hard and rural jobs dried up. While the southern region of the US did have some industry, it overall paled in comparison to places like Detroit, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Chicago, New York City, and many more cities.
Okay.
Yeah, they were massive in that
Industrialization, of
industry-
course, is
industry.
no longer really a factor today, but it's left a lasting legacy on the entire region we're talking about.
That's the interesting
Let's
question.
get this
Why
out
not
of the way
today?
to start.
Yeah, what's wrong
People
with it?
do move to this region at large. The states of Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, and of course Florida have all grown between
Okay, they're all
2010
growing.
and 2020. Mississippi shrank by less than 1%, but by and large,
Mississippi.
people do move here.
Yeah, I
However,
feel like there's bad stigma about Mississippi as well, isn't there? Isn't when we do the videos, Mississippi quite ranked low
Yeah,
down?
for quite a lot of things.
So that would make sense why it's the lowest out of all of them. But
Yeah.
it shouldn't be too different.
It's sad
But...
because I just found a favourite song today. It's called Mississippi.
Oh, you did listen to a song. And if you're from Mississippi, we hope you're okay. Obviously, with the tornadoes and stuff like that, we
Yeah.
do hope you're all okay.
if you're noticing a trend, you're not mistaken. Florida and Georgia grew much faster than our other states.
Okay.
And most of the growth in those states are not near our Gulf Coast region.
Okay.
If we look at the major cities in our region, aside from two, most are suffering pretty anemic growth. New Orleans grew by about 11% since 2010, and Tallahassee grew by 8%. But Lafayette, Louisiana, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Jackson, Mississippi, Mobile, Alabama,
Not looking
Montgomery,
good.
Alabama, and even Pensacola, Florida, all had pretty slow growth or shrank over this time period.
But overall,
And
we
one of the
grew.
most
That's
basic
positive.
reasons why people appear to be staying away from this region seems to be the lack of jobs at large, made worse by having poor infrastructure. According to the American Society of Civil Engineers, Louisiana and Mississippi were each given a grade of D+ in their latest report card, with roads, bridges, and drinking water all taking pretty big hits.
That's not
Good.
good, is it?
Alabama manages a C- overall. Not great, but at least better. Georgia and Florida both achieved better grades, but our Gulf Coast region is not receiving the bulk of their investments. And this trickles down. With a lack of investment in infrastructure, industry is not likely to move to the region.
Okay.
And without a vibrant industry and economy, things like education rates suffer. Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama all have some of the lowest rates of bachelor degrees in the country. This doesn't mean people from those states aren't getting college degrees, but it does mean that they're not staying. And
Yeah,
especially
they're
things
just
like the
moving
current
out.
Jackson,
Yeah.
Mississippi water crisis doesn't exactly help things look better. After all, would you move to a state that has undrinkable water? But two other kind of recent events hit the region really hard.
Yeah, that's scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
The hurricanes and stuff like that.
You really can't talk about this specific region without talking about two major catastrophic events: Hurricane Katrina and the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. In 2005, a Category 5 hurricane slammed into the entire region today, but particularly New Orleans. The devastation of the city and many coastal cities and towns in the
150
entire
billion.
region was phenomenal. Between 2000 and 2010, New Orleans lost about 30% of its total population. And overall, the storm is predicted to have caused upwards of $150 billion in damage. Gulfport, Mobile, Pensacola, and many more Gulf Coast cities were hit hard. And this storm had a huge knockdown effect on the entire region. And then, just 5 short years later, in the midst of economic recovery, the region was sent reeling once again when an oil derrick off the coast of Louisiana and Mississippi started leaking an incredible amount of oil. After nearly 5 months of spewing oil into the ocean, the leak was sealed. But by that point, over 210 million gallons of oil was
That's a lot of
spreading
oil.
through the
Yeah.
Gulf Coast, much of which ended up in this region. This essentially halted almost all economic activity for the coastal communities who, prior to this event, were sustained by tourism.
Yeah,
While
you're
both
not
of
gonna-
these events happened well over
If
a
you know the sea's full of oil, you're not going to go, are you?
No.
You ain't going
It's
on
not gonna be
holiday
fun.
there.
decade ago, each combined near enough to each other to effectively create a decade of economic malaise that the region is only just beginning to emerge from today.
Makes
the Gulf
sense.
Coast region today is generally back to growing, but it's probably not growing as fast as it should be. The Houston and South Texas areas, as well as the southern Florida cities, are all growing much faster. But as those places get more expensive, maybe this region will get another population boom. I hope you enjoyed
Potentially, that's
learning
a
more
point.
about the
When the other
gold.
places get more expensive,
Yeah.
they may go a bit cheaper. But I feel like the risk of hurricanes and stuff like that,
So if you want, it's a risk people don't want to take nowadays.
definitely, especially because it's more widespread, the damage. You see
Mhm.
more clips of it and you
Yeah.
realise how awful it actually is.
Yeah.
I know it's rare, but it is absolutely devastating, isn't it? So that
Yeah,
could be a little
definitely.
bit scary. We hope all you legends are all okay. Smash that button if you enjoyed, guys. Smash that subscribe button as well, you absolute legends. We've got dinner in the oven, haven't we? So
We need to go and check it. It's not
we
a
need to
bird.
check it. So a quick outro. We hope you're having a fantastic day. What should I do?
Have a fantastic
Yeah, I messed that one
day.
up. And we'll see you, legends, in the next one. Peace.